Most entrepreneurs miss out on opportunities due to lack of leadership or not knowing how to connect with the right people. They struggle keeping their sales pipeline full and booking qualified leads. On Business Leaders Network, you will learn from experts who will give you tactical tools and strategies to help you grow as a leader and how to keep your sales pipeline full, increasing your bottom line. Now, here is your host of Business Leaders Network with your strategic business success coach, J.R. Spear.
Hey everyone, my name is JR and I'm your host on the Business Leaders Network, and we are on the Inspired Choices Network. Really excited about today's show, and every week we come to you live teaching you guys about leadership, sales, marketing, systems, processes, and finances. And we have an amazing online community that if you have not checked this out, we'll love to invite you as my personal guest, but just go to blncommunity.com. That's blncommunity.com and click on guest pass or get started and fill in the information, and then you'll get the information to join us, where every week we go live with the masterclass as well as networking calls so you can connect with other industry leaders to grow your influence and grow your impact. Go to blncommunity.com. And if you have not grabbed a copy of my book, go to jrspear.com. It's called The Success Guide to Building Your Coaching Empire, where I give you 4 non-negotiable tasks that you need to do daily to build your business. Go to jrspear.com. All right, today we have a very special guest, and his name is Eric Beck. And Eric, he will be diving deep and talking about how making work a game worth playing. This thrilling show will guide you through practical steps to grow your business while igniting loyalty and passion within your team. Discover the key to owning a business that doesn't control your life, but instead empowers you to achieve success on your terms. Eric, thank you so much for being a guest today.
Hey, JR, thanks so much, man. Thanks for having me.
No, I'm glad that you're here and that we got connected. So why don't we start out by telling the audience about your journey and kind of how you got started as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, for sure. So I hope everybody can relate to this. Completely backwards, not planned, random, scrapping, nothing went according to schedule, that kind of thing. You know, I feel like when we look at it from hindsight, it's like it all makes sense. But of course, the front side of it is the underside of the rug. And it takes a while to get to the place where you're like, oh, I see. So really, for me, started off in education. And when I was in the process of learning how to teach and all that, just wound up stepping into the business world really on accident. So I would say this, got into performance, really. That's the better starting place, in music. Went to school for music, toured the country, did a bunch of stuff we could talk about if you want. But the net result was I fell in love with teaching on accident. And then wound up becoming the director of training at eMyth Worldwide, and learned about the whole world of entrepreneurship, business coaching, and leadership. And then that was 25 years ago. So just like that.
It's really cool. So how did you get into music? I mean, did you go to college for music, you said?
I did. I went to college for music. High school band, junior high, somebody said, hey, do you want to do art or do you want to do music? And I was like, I don't know, let's do music. And they're like, choose an instrument. And I was like, well, the trumpet looks cool. So I started playing trumpet. A couple of years later, a band director played some jazz music. I had never heard anything like this music, and it just blew me away. It was Dizzy Gillespie. The song was A Night in Tunisia, and it was this combination of African and Cuban rhythms and harmonies, and it just was the thing, So when I was kind of coming out of high school, I had to choose between physics. I had taken AP physics and was very interested in the sciences. A big fan of Richard Feynman and read all of his letters and studies, as well as a whole series of things. Just having seen the Oppenheimer movie took me back to a lot of my earlier studies. But I did decide to go with music, much to my family's chagrin. And then, like I said, I changed my major from music performance to education, and did some work in composition, ran sound, eventually started touring as a musician, and so again, not a plan, but kind of how it worked out.
So how does your transition work out from going from music to education and wanting to teach to actually leading entrepreneurs?
Well, that's a great question, because to me, it may be not obvious on the outside, but when I look at it from the inside, to me, it's exactly ordered and structured. I got to perform at the Lincoln Center and the Hollywood Bowl. My favorite performance, though, was the New York City performance in Avery Fisher Hall. The gentleman conducting us, his name was Eiji Oe, and he was at the time the conductor emeritus at the Minneapolis Symphony. He came in to conduct with us, and I knew he was very famous. I didn't really know his background. Just before we went on to perform that night, I saw him kiss his cufflinks, and we were all intimidated. I think I was 19 or 20 years old, and you don't even want to speak to someone like that. You just are so lucky to be there with them. And so I did. A friend of mine, Frank, was like, "Hey, Eric, ask him, you ask him." I'm like, "Okay." So I did. And he said, "Well, they were given to me by Leonard Bernstein." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, wow." He said that, but they were given to Leonard Bernstein by Arturo Toscanini. And I was just like, I can't believe I'm hearing these words. And he said, but they were given to Toscanini by Leopold Stokowski. Now, for those of you who are not a music nerd like I am, none of those names may mean anything to you, but I'll tell you, you do know who Leopold Stokowski is. And here's how you know. Because if you watch Bugs Bunny's, the cartoons in the 1970s, the 80s, you remember when Bugs Bunny is making that tenor sing so long that the Hollywood Bowl falls down, right? His hand is in the air, like this whole thing, right? When he walks in, everyone's going, Leopold, Leopold, Leopold. That's Leopold Stokowski. That's the epitome of the musical world. Anyway, I got to be trained and conducted by this man who was 4 generations in the making. And that impacted me way past music. I started to see that music is just really the orderly arrangement of a wide variety of inputs to create an amazing experience. And when I went to work at eMyth and they said, "Hey, can you help us with our coaching curriculum? Can you help us train coaches? Can you lead these leadership retreats?" Which I did eventually. I didn't do it at the beginning. I saw the same thing. I was like, I don't know anything about music. I'm sorry, about business, but I know exactly what I'm seeing here, because everything I learned in music, it's exactly this. This business is an orchestra. The customer service moment is the concert, right? And I just saw these parallels and just dove headlong into it. And I still play trumpet occasionally. I kid around. I say I sound good for about 3 minutes, and then my face gives out. But it's the same thing. It is that, whether it's martial arts or the military, some other things in my background, being a parent, it's the same exact thing. When we try to get people together around a vision, think of that music. And we say that we got to get everybody on the same page, singing, from the same song. It's like, really, it is true. Because when you are playing music that you truly love and you're passionate about, you play better than you ever could on your own. And that's what's missing, is that people are not on the same sheet of music. In fact, there is no music. It's just make money. There's nothing that calls to the deeper sense. Often, I want to say never, but often we've lost that. And restoring that seems a little woo-woo, maybe in navel gazing, but the reality is that an on-fire human being, even in 3 people, can do something absolutely spectacular. And they do, just like McDonald's did. That was, the model at eMyth was the franchise model, based off of McDonald's. And it's like, it's a little hamburger shop in the middle of nowhere. Well, now it's not in the middle of nowhere. Now it's everywhere. And again, it came from that same thinking of seeing things as an integrated whole instead of just the broken apart pieces.
Yeah. So there's a few things that I want to untangle here. One, you're speaking my language. If you said your background's martial arts and then you have a military background, because I've done martial arts since I was, took my first breath and grew up in that family. And then I'm a combat veteran myself as well. So I want to go into that. But for all the listeners out there, you keep mentioning eMyth and you work for them. And why don't you break that down? Like, what is eMyth and the organization for those that's never even heard of it?
You got it. So same as everybody else, maybe I had no idea about the eMyth. I literally got my job from the newspaper. I had finished teaching in 9th grade and was looking for a job in Northern California, found this company eMyth. Well, what became obvious to me eventually was that this guy, Michael Gerber, was a really famous speaker and author called The eMyth, which stands for the entrepreneurial myth. And it was a total flop. and no one really read it, but somebody at HarperCollins or somebody found it and said, okay, wait a minute, this is genius, but we got to rewrite it. So there was the E-Myth Revisited. That's the one that I found out about, that little blue book from years ago. And what that is the story of Sarah, who is a pie baker, house's bakery, and decides, heck, I can do it way better than this, so I'm going to. And it is a story of her realizing that she gave up one job and got 12 jobs, that she left the structure of being on someone else's boat and she needed to now captain her own boat. And it is a conversation between her and Michael about what effectively is the E-Myth methodology of, there's a myth that entrepreneurs start businesses. They don't. Entrepreneurs buy and sell businesses. A technician that has an entrepreneurial seizure launches business. Again, this is aimed at, let's say 50 employees or under, 500 employees or under, somewhere in there. It's a small business. Somebody's got that fire. They got that passion, and here they go. And they don't know much about running the business. They just know about the technical part. So E-Myth then, around that book and Michael's other efforts, became one of the first, if not the first, small business coaching companies out there back in the day when we were faxing people their modules, and it was all on a conference bridge. And if that sounds hilarious to you guys, that's just a sign of the times. There was no Zoom or GoToMeeting or any of that stuff, WebEx, right? It was all old school, but it was about systemization, and it was about bringing order to the musicians, getting the parts written out on each for each instrument to do, what they're supposed to do at the right time to create, a pretty extraordinary result.
Yeah, that definitely had kicked off your success as an entrepreneur working with E-Myth, because, from some of your stats, I have here saying that you have helped more than 960 businesses generate over $240 million in additional revenue. Why don't you explain a little bit about that?
Yes, well, I'm happy to report it's now we crossed the 1,000 mark a few months ago. So that's nice. Good. Thank you. I mean, ultimately it's this, a lot of potential. And I'm not just talking about going in and looking at the P&L and saying, okay, spending too much money here, let's trim this back, let's outsource this. That is a type of consulting work, but I don't really like it or want to do it. What I want to do is I want to get the owner in alignment with their highest calling and purpose, so that the business is a vehicle for that purpose. Let me make it even clearer. If you hire someone who is really competent and they're a good person, but they're not going where you're going, you're going to automatically have a disconnect. It's like being on the train from Atlanta to Nashville, but where you really want to go is Memphis. At some point on that journey, people are going to start jumping off the train. Now, imagine that you hire people and you never take the time to figure out, where are they going? You never ask even some basic questions that, see, the calling piece is the most important piece. Now, I know that can again sound kind of maybe wishy-washy and like, do you mean like destiny? Do you mean like, what are you talking about? And it's like, no, we can make it much simpler than that. You see, if the business is not a vehicle for the daily of you and your team, you still don't really have an aligned business. You might have a good idea. You might have a good market. You might be making a lot of money, but what you don't have is alignment. And I think about it from, you were talking about martial arts a second ago. I've broken everything and gone through all this stuff. And, one of my favorite things to do in tournaments is foot sweeps. I love throws. It was always been a favorite thing for me. When somebody gets you in true right way, it is humbling, right? Gravity is no respecter of people. And so when you hit the mat like that, you're like, holy moly, it resets you. Now, for me, I've never been injured, knock on wood. I've never been injured in a fall. I've had my orbital broken and ribs broken and all that sort of stuff. But the fall always feels, I know I'm weird, it feels like a reset, like boom, everything's lined up now. That's what needs to happen in the business and for the entrepreneur. It's like, hey, maybe you got in here for the money or you got in here for the opportunity, but in your gut, you're like, I kind of hate this. This is not me. How about the employees that feel that way? So for me, one of the most important things to do is to bring the alignment into place, because when that's there, everything starts operating together. for the martial arts side of it, as you would know, that's where your power comes from. You can have huge muscles and all kinds of force, but if the force is not focused, if there's not a force multiplier, again, you're missing out on so much that could happen. And we chase ClickFunnels and this thing and this gimmick and this thing and that, it's like, yeah, they can be great. They can work. But again, if what we're doing is getting great at marketing and we're not getting great at delivering the value, which unfortunately I see more and more of today, no wonder people have imposter syndrome. That's what it means. Imposter is you're good at talking about it, but you can't back it up. What do they say? It's all hat and no horse.
Yeah. Well, we're getting ready to go on our first break. We definitely started the show off very well. But when we come back, I want to focus on how you're helping your clients get the alignment and purpose and making sure that they're going in the right direction. And I like how you talk about being thrown on the mat, because the immediate image that I had in my head was how many throws I've had to do myself, or how many times I've been thrown to the mat. And if you're being thrown to the mat, well, you always want to break the fall with with your arm and with the roll and everything else that you do. And it's just that immediate, like the first time, unexpected, when you don't know how to actually break the fall, it hurts. But when you start learning how to break the fall, it becomes more relaxed. It becomes a lot easier. It becomes more expected. And I wanted to say that because it's a really good example for what you're saying, where it's like you got that reset, but it's also a wake-up call that the more that you do it, the easier things starting to become. Because think of it like a child. A child doesn't know the difference, climbing up to the top of the counter and jumping off until they jump off and get hurt, and now they're like, I don't want to do that again. And so a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. So when you do that fall, it hurts that first time. But once you start to learn the processes, once you start learning how to break that fall, once you start learning how to actually overcome the gravity and make it a little bit easier and less painful, so that way you can move to something else, then you become more aligned and it becomes a lot easier in business and everything else. So really, really great example. But I just remember that feeling, like right when you said that, my back just went boom, and I was like, oh shit,
exactly. Yes.
Because I've been thrown on the mat 1,000 times, and I was like, okay, do I remember how to do this? Because it's been years since I've done that. So really cool example. So we're going to go to this break. When we come back, I would like to hit a little bit more on how you help your clients get aligned and find that purpose, so that way they can start that reset process.
Most entrepreneurs miss out on opportunities due to lack of leadership or not knowing how to connect with the right people or the right customers. They struggle keeping their sales pipeline full and booking qualified leads. What would your business look like if you had a team to support you referring your ideal clients who are excited and ready to buy? Business Leaders Network is a mastermind networking community where we focus on education, learning from industry leaders, networking, and building real connections. You can learn more by visiting businessleadersnetworking.com or by tuning into our weekly show with your strategic business success coach, J.R. Spear, on Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, 12 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
This is Business Leaders Network with J.R. Spear. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience. Back to the program.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. My name is JR, and I am your host on the Business Leaders Network, and we are on the Inspired Choices Network. And if you have not heard about our community, I would love to invite you to our online community where every week we have weekly mastermind calls where we focus on leadership, sales, marketing, systems, process, finances, where we get together, share ideas, give you resources that can help you guys grow your impact and grow your influence so you can go out there and make a difference. You can just easily go to blncommunity.com. That's blncommunity.com. We also have weekly networking calls where you can connect with industry leaders and have breakout rooms and just really grow your network and grow your influence. Go to blncommunity.com. All right, we're going to go back to our show, and we are here with Eric Beck today. And we have, if you missed the first part of our show, we learned a little bit about his background, about how he got started in music and how he got started working with the E-Myth, and how that really took off his entrepreneur and education, but also how they've been able to help more than 1,000 businesses generate over $240 million in additional revenue, and so many things that we're unpacking. But one thing that we definitely ended the first part of the show was starting out and really figuring out how you need to be aligned with your clients, your product, your business, and everything that it goes. And I'm going to have Eric take over the mic and start breaking down how he helps his clients become more aligned.
Yeah. Well, again, I just want everybody to think about it. If you've ever had back pain, I had catastrophic sciatica
now, man.
for a while. Oh man. Right. So here's the thing. Is it that your back isn't strong? Probably not. Is it that your hamstrings or your muscles are not capable? Probably not. Right. What's happening is an alignment problem. You can take a big old athlete or a warrior, and you say, wow, they're so strong. Yeah. Put their finger in a bowling ball that's just a little bit too tight, and spin that ball around, pop that finger out of joint, and all of a sudden, all of that muscle, that strength, that power goes away because you lose leverage. And I think that what we've done in the quote knowledge economy is we've gone after more and more power. And it's like, it's great. We do need to be able to run our 5-minute miles and do our push-ups and do our stuff. That's true. We need the power and the capability. But what we also need is leverage. And leverage is about what everybody knows, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum, and I could move the whole world. Sometimes running a business feels like that, right? Like, this is so hard. I don't have enough money, so I can't market. And because I can't market, I don't get clients. And because I don't get clients, I don't have money. It's this endless cycle. I just want to say to folks, whenever you feel like you're in a loop like that, first of all, having done this for 25 years, you are not alone. You're not alone. We all get there. The question is, do we get off of the hot seat before the surgery is over? I love the idea that things are not happening to you, things are happening for you. And I know, again, it can sound like a little pie in the sky to be like, oh yeah, take the lemons and turn it to lemonade. But I want to tell you what, when it comes down to the moment, we can be driven by a fear, heads up display that is all about threats and all about problems. Or we can be driven by, hey, I recognize the threats and the problems, but I'm driven by my passion and I'm driven by my vision. So when a business owner comes to us at Founders Fire and says, hey, I've heard you talk about this, or your TEDx talk, or this thing or that thing, or an awesome podcast like what you are, I want to get my business in alignment. What does that actually mean? And what are you talking about? What it means is that we need to have a governing story and ethos for your business. This is not about sales. Okay. So this is totally internal. You need to go on the journey with your ideal client through the ideal experience sometime in the next 18 months. Everybody's like, oh, well, it's like a customer service roadmap. It is, but it needs to be epic. And I'll tell you why. Stories move the world. Every person who's ever done anything great had a story going on in their head. You can think about Moses or Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr. or fill in the blank with some epic personality from the past who did something. They always talk about they had a sense of what they were going towards, what they saw, what was drawn out of them. Think about Jesus going to the cross, right? And it says that for the glory set before him, he suffered the shame of the cross. Whatever story you need to connect to, realize stories are what move behavior. And when someone starts telling a more negative story, I can't, I probably won't, I shouldn't, people like me, never, all that kind of limiting beliefs, that's this thing that is crept in, which is that we don't, I think the word would be, we don't cultivate, we don't caretake the story. And so we just kind of get the story of survival of like, wake up, do work, go to bed, wake up, do work, go to bed. So the first thing that we've got to do with a small business owner or entrepreneur or large business owner for that matter, I've worked with a few of those, is to say, I want you to tell me exactly how you want to make your customer feel at every single step along the way. Now, I was sharing this at a conference once, and somebody came up to me and they said, hey, do you know that Lowe's, like the home improvement store, they teach this? And I was like, I didn't know that. Tell me about it. And they were like, yeah, they say, look, you're not just selling the 2x4 to Mrs. Jones. You're selling her part of the deck that she will many years from now celebrate her 80th birthday on. And I was like, that is it. You see, you've taken something that's fairly mundane and maybe even a little transactional, and you've brought meaning to it. And while people are like, yeah, but it's still just fake and you're still just thinking it up, I want to say two things to the naysayers. First of all, cut it out, because you're bringing the rest of us down. So just keep it to yourself. The second thing I want to say is be honest with yourself. You probably had a fire in your heart at some place where you were passionate about something, but because of circumstances or whatever, it didn't go the way you thought. Don't give up on the idea of the passionate pursuit of a game worth playing, because they're still out there and the world needs them now more than ever. And so when we create this Mrs. Jones story, how did she hear about you? What happened next? What happened next? In an ideal situation, not necessarily today, not 50 years from now, but let's say sometime in the next 18 months, it would be doable to create it like this. I want to draw that fire out of your heart and create that story. And I want to get it into a Robert Frost short story little format. It might take 8 minutes to read. It's not a mission statement. Nobody cares about those. It's a compelling story. I mean, if you think about that, even during COVID, even during all the hard times, you can look at the last 20 years, anything that was connected to a powerful story thrived. Tell me how much money the Marvel Comics movies have made. Why? Because we, are motivated by this sense of team. It's not like when I was growing up, maybe when you're growing up, Jared, where it's like the solo guy, the world Superman. Now Superman's on a team in a way that was not true in the movies in the 80s. Okay. Indiana Jones, right? It was all about Indy and how awesome he was. And it was awesome. But in this modern era, we want to be a part of a collaborative need to, because our problems are so big that there's not going to be the one brilliant person who solves it all. And when we give people a game worth playing, we're saying, let me tell you the story. And then I want to ask you, this is a hiring technique that I'm giving everybody right now. How do you see yourself meaningfully contributing to this story? Where in this story can you be the hero? That's calling. And that is what we have to all align to, because if they're smart and they're hardworking and they're a good person, but they are not aligned to the story, and you have not created that game worth playing, they'll go play someone else's game. They will. Maybe they'll give you 2 weeks notice. Probably they won't. Maybe they'll let you know it's not working out, but let's be honest, probably they won't. And we kind of criticize the younger generation and say, oh, these millennials, and you can't find good people. And I just want to say, hogwash, stop making excuses. You need to put your heart on the your passion. That is what leadership is. It's not knowing everything. It's saying, I know where I'm going and I will go there. Would you like to help me? Can you come with me for some part of your journey and we can go there together? Yes, in the context of a dry cleaners or a little mom and pop restaurant or a doggy daycare. And it seems like that would never work. I'm going to tell you, it works so good. You can't believe it. They don't have people problems because you solve the fundamental issue, which is vision. And again, it sounds so cliche, but as you would know from your time in the military, if I don't know what the mission is, if I don't know my role in this team, if I don't know what I'm supposed to do in our overlapping fields of fire, what's going to happen when it's on? What's going to happen is people are going to die, and we're not going to be able to accomplish our mission objectives. It is literally the same thing. That's why we use military terms in business. What do you think? Where do you think company comes from? Or officers? Right? Those are military terms because in a certain sense, especially for what I would think of as a righteous business, we're trying to set people free. We're trying to bring something to their life that truly helps them. We're not just going to buy it for $1 and sell it for $2 and say, yeah, I'm in business. What a good, follower of Adam Smith I am. We're saying this is something that changes people's lives. And if you want to be a part of it, we would love to have you. That all of a sudden creates the alignment that we're talking about. And if we haven't done it, I just want to say to people, what do you expect to have happen if you're not all in like that? Now, most business owners are, but they don't quite have the tool set to bring it to bear. But that's why I have a job.
Yeah, a lot of really good things that you just unpacked right there. And, the crazy thing that people don't really understand is like, man, I don't really have a story. And the reality is we all have a story. We just need to figure out how can we relate our story to the practical thing that we're actually wanting to teach. And for me, I'm a really great example. I was, my story, I was blown up by a suicide bomber at a walking checkpoint in Iraq. It took me probably more than 10 years to really figure out how I can relate that to entrepreneurs, to be able to get them to emotionally involved so I can turn it into concepts to be able to teach them. No different what you're saying with officers or, context of systems and processes and training and everything that leads to it. Because, I don't know if you spent time in combat, but, when you're over in combat, Iraq or whatever it may be, it's like being on a sports team. You're training, and then, for what? To go sit on the sidelines? No, you're training to go out there and fight, to go out there and play. So that way, when the time comes for you to actually perform or to execute the things that you've been training to do, you got to be able to react without responding. And that's just constant repetition to be able to do it. But the reason why I bring that up is not just to tell about my story and what I do, but the point is that it took me years, like probably 5 to 10 years, to really figure out how, I struggle with this greatly. I struggle with the fact is okay, how can I take this experience that I went through and turn it into an actual concept to help entrepreneurs?
Yes.
But we all got that story. We all have something that we could take. And now once I learned the power of storytelling, I could take anything. It's like, hey, you know what? Good example. I used to be a really avid triathlete and did triathlons for 7 or 8 years. And I was doing up to 4 or 5 a year, did a half Ironman in 2015. And, talking about the power of a coach, I haven't been to really actively swimming since 2015 after I did the half Ironman. And I started getting in the pool again the past month or so. And then last week I was in the pool and, there was a young guy there and he was watching me and watching my strokes. It's not like I was doing bad, but he just offered a little tip. He's like, hey, can I give you some little pointer? Well, he gave me one little tip that saved me so much energy just on my breath on how to do it, just by putting your ear to your shoulder. I never had anyone teach me how to swim. I just knew how to do it. The point that I'm making is taking that one little experience really showed me about the power of a coach. Yeah. I've done more than a couple dozen triathlons. I swam a half Ironman's 1.2 mile swim in the river while I'm doing this race. But one little thing that I didn't even realize that I was doing wrong, and having another person see the whole of what I needed to improve to make me better was game changer for me. And it just showed me, it was eye-awakening to me. It was like, man, we all need a coach. Yeah. See what I just did? I took this one experience of me just swimming, someone give me a tips and turning it into a concept of why people need help, why people need to hire you as a coach to be able to do it.
Well, it's just leverage, man. JR, it's leverage. Just like you said, it's like, hey, I am putting in the energy, but that one little technique or that one little ability that it lines everything up. And now all of a sudden you're blazing across that water and it's like, oh, okay. And you can't do it for yourself. No doctor operates on their own family. Same reason. Yeah,
absolutely. I love that. Well, hey, we're going to be going to our second break right now, but when we come back, I want to hit on actually what the topic is about for today and making work a game worth playing. So if you can start thinking about what that sounds like and then how we can lead that in, let's start the next half of our show with that title. All right, we'll see you guys back here shortly.
Most entrepreneurs miss out on opportunities due to lack of leadership or not knowing how to connect with the right people or the right customers. They struggle keeping their sales pipeline full and booking qualified leads. What would your business look like if you had a team to support you referring your ideal clients who are excited and ready to buy? Business Leaders Network is a mastermind networking community where we focus on education, learning from industry leaders, networking, and building real connections. You can learn more by visiting businessleadersnetworking.com or by tuning into our weekly show with your strategic business success coach, J.R. Spear, on Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, 12 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is Business Leaders Network with J.R. Spear. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to grow@businessleadersnetworking.com. Now, back to the program.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. My name is JR, and I'm your host on the Business Leaders Network, and we are on the Inspired Choices Network. And today we have an amazing guest named Eric Beck. And before we get back into our show, I just want to invite you guys, if you have not been part of our Business Leaders Network community, we have weekly mastermind training calls where we talk about leadership, sales, marketing, systems, processes, and finances. So many great things for you to be able to get the tools and resources that you need that's going to help you guys grow. We also have weekly networking calls where you can go in breakout rooms and learn and connect and grow your network, everything that you need to help you grow your influence and your impact. Come as my VIP guest by going to blncommunity.com. That's BLN Community for Business Leaders Network. So blncommunity.com. Click on Get Started and come join us on one of our weekly calls. Love to see you guys there. And if you have not grabbed a copy of my book, The Success Guide to Building Your Coaching Empire, go to jrspear.com. That's jrspear.com. Love for you to grab a copy. All right. We were talking to Eric Beck about so many amazing things, but to kind of recap, he started working at eMyth after an amazing musical career, spent some time in the military, spent some time in martial arts, a lot of awesome things, have helped more than 1,000 entrepreneurs generate over $250 million in additional revenue. And we talked about how to get aligned with your business through storytelling. And now we're going to lead in with making work a game worth playing. So Eric, let's hit the road and start sharing how we can make the work a game worth playing.
Yeah, man, you bet. I'm still struck by the fact that I think we're brothers from other mothers, but it's like our paths are so similar. I love how things line up like this.
Well, I'm a musician too, if you didn't know that. I mean, I play guitar and sing and played worship leaders at church for a long time.
Exactly. Like I think we have been on a very similar journey here. So I'm just so glad that these things connect. And I just want to encourage you. You're not the one in control of everything. It doesn't mean we don't have responsibility. Of course we do. But there's a larger story that we're all, and just even being open to the possibility of that takes so much of the pressure off of our shoulders so that we can apply our energies appropriately. We only have 24 hours in a day. And when you read about somebody like Einstein or somebody like, Isaac Newton or somebody, you're just like, how did they do that? And again, just a nerdy little fact here about Isaac Newton. He actually wrote out calculus in the time it takes a college student to take the course.
Oh, wow.
It's
That's crazy.
Like, how is that possible? I'll tell you how it's possible. Same with Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin was America's first millionaire. And when I was working on a book, which was going to come out here in a little bit, which is appropriately called A Game Worth Playing, Reinventing Our Relationship to Work, I was researching the to-do list, and I found a journal entry from Benjamin Franklin's journal in Smithsonian. And when I've been teaching my clients for the last, at this point, it was about 17 years. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that he structured his day just like this. We won't get into it today, but I'll tell you what, it's those kinds of things where it's like, okay, it's not about more effort. It's not about more pressure. There has to be enough, like you got to bring it. So we're not talking about somebody going halfway, but a lot of the times we get into the slaving, it's just that there's a slavish spirit really that is especially in America, where it's like, you gotta, a side hustle and this, and you got to hack that, and you got to do this. And it's all these like tips and tricks that really come from this kind of a lie. I'll just be honest with you, that technology has given us. I love technology. I do. We have software at Founders Fire that helps our clients implement what we're talking about. So like, I'm totally down for technology, but a lot of times technology gives us this offer. If you'll use me, I'll give you free time. And that's just a fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. See, there is no free time. We have to pre-spend our time. And when we have free time, what we have is conflict and confusion and disarray. And because so many people aren't following a plan in their life, in their relationships, in their business, there's always confusion happening. And that's what is this whole stress, this slaving mentality. A game worth playing is totally different. Now, a game worth playing is there's no coercion. Now, I don't know. I grew up in Tennessee, so we played backyard football. I had a pretty meager upbringing, so it wasn't a lot of, awesome this and that. But I'll tell you what there was this big church that was behind my house, and they had a huge amount of land. Now, to me, it was huge. It's probably about a couple of acres, but to me, as an 8-year-old, it was huge. And we would go over there and play, pick up football, right? Well, I loved it. What I didn't like was when it wasn't clear who was going to be on what team. And what I didn't like was when it wasn't clear who was going to be the quarterback for the next play or where the end zone actually was. Let me just ask you this. If you imagine that you're playing a game and you love it at the beginning, but there's no boundaries, there's no end zone, there's no rules, there's no score, pretty soon it's like, that's a kid's game. And it was fun for a while, but now let's say I'm 14 and I want to play real football. It's not that. What is, quote, real football? Well, all of a sudden you got lines on the field. You probably got some coaches. You got a helmet on. Now we've got clear objectives. And I just want to say, if you're not into sports and you're like, yeah, this doesn't really apply to me. Okay, think about music. Okay, think about chess. Think about think about solitaire, some game you play on your phone, Candy Crush. Any game worth playing has the same set of characteristics. Now, if some of you guys listen to Andrew Huberman on the Huberman podcast, he talks about this quote where he's 400 repetitions. But if you do it in the context of a game, the same thing can be learned in 20 repetitions or less. So acquisition, you were talking about going from lower performing to higher performing. Well, sure, you can do it the 400 time way. But again, that's just more of that slaving model. But to do it with strategic leverage, you put it in the context of a game, something comes out of people. And not just the competitive side. We know about that. But the collaborative side. Harvard has studies in the business school there that go into, the best competitive models never perform as well as the worst collaborative models. Well, it makes perfect sense. You're going to, it's like it's a football team. Great. So there's a bunch of guys over there and just me over here. It doesn't matter who I am. You can fill in the name of the most awesome running back in the history, but it's 12-on-1, right? So the whole idea of that team. Now, what if you took that idea and you said, now there are 12 parts to a business, and there are marketing, sales, finance, leadership, like some of those you mentioned. We use the analogy of a flagship. But all these parts of the ship are the 12 different areas. What if you had that team, all 12 areas working together, and the people in those areas? Now, all of a sudden, we have a boat that is at top speed. This boat's not going to crash. This boat's going to get to safe harbor. The difference, though, is, like we said before, are we rowing in the same direction? Are we creating a game worth playing? And here's the thing that undermines all this good effort is how we pay people. We want people to act like owners, but we pay them like slaves. We pay them for their time. And yes, I know it's nothing like real slavery. And I want to make that clear. I don't mean to make the analogy too strong, but I will tell you this. If you spend 40 or 50 or 60 years of your life trading 5 days of one thing for 2 days of another, and you're still in debt and you don't have any financial security and you don't have the means to protect and take care of yourself at the end of the day, it is kind of, not exactly, but kind of a type of slaving. And we hate it. We call it working for the man. Back in my day, right? I'm taking what they're giving because I'm working for a living. You could take this job and shove it, right? We know this idea of trading time for money is bankrupt. So when we create a game worth playing and we get the story and we get the alignment, but then we ruin it because at the end of the week, but they're in the same job and they both make $20 an hour. What happens on Friday? They both get paid $20 an hour. So we harmed our good employee and we promoted an average employee, not even meaning to, because it's an unexamined system. And that's ultimately what we've got to look at. We've got to look at how is it that I can make every job, not just sales, every job relate to, if this person goes above and beyond, they see it on this paycheck, not I hope I get a raise next year, and not I hope there's the Christmas bonus or whatever. All of that is just misaligned incentives trying to cover up the basic problem, which is not everybody uses their time as effectively to create value as everybody else. But we just never thought of that. We're just like, well, you can pay a salesperson commission, but everybody else used to pay a flat rate, a salary, or an hourly. It's like making it a game worth playing. The key piece to all these is that it has to affect compensation in real time. And if it does, then people are like, hey, I just scored a touchdown. As soon as you do, what do? You look up at the scoreboard. And if you see that 6 roll over, you're like, heck yeah, right? You're like, it's official. It happened. How disheartening to say to an employee, I want you to think like an owner, put in the extra effort. And what happens is you get paid the same. Pretty soon that person's either going to leave or they're going to do what we call regression to the mean. They're going to float down to the Steve Slacker level and just do the minimums, just enough not to get fired. And then you're like, what the heck? What's going on? That's what we got to do. We got to overturn that system. And that's what I mean when I say a game worth playing.
No, that's so many really great things that you hit on. And it's funny because I'm everything that you're talking about. I've had multiple conversations just in this past week alone, and you're talking about everyone rowing in the same direction and being able to be on the same page and working on with the goals of what you can do. But then even the incentive for paying people, faster versus later on. Even when it comes to like making me reflect, like we give bonuses and incentives on a monthly basis, but it's like, okay, what if I make that change and instead of on monthly, we do it on a weekly basis? If they reach this goal, then we're to pay them this bonus on a week. Will that motivate them a little bit more and encourage them to want to continue to do them better? And should they be rewarded for those different things? So I like that. I mean, it goes back to childhood. It's like when we think about. But I'm thinking I have 4 kids now. So I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, a almost 3-year-old little girl, and then I have a 6-week-old boy.
Oh, and congratulations!
So I'm definitely tired if you can't see the bags on my eyes right now. but I'm thinking very clearly about my 5-year-old boy. His name's Rowan, and love him to death. But I can't get him to move for anything. But if I say, hey, I'll give you a lollipop if you take care of me, you do this now. But recently my wife did something very genius. Mm-hmm. She created a point system for them, and they had to earn, because we don't do screen time, that much and all these different things. But the reward system is like, hey, they have to do, because we're trying to teach them kindness. Yeah. So it's like, hey, if you go above and beyond and do something kind without us having to tell you, well, then you get a point. And so each point constitutes as so much screen time that they get. They have to reach so many different points. And I'll tell you, this has ultimately changed our entire household, because now
that's it, man.
But I started seeing this going on. My wife did this all on herself, so I can't take any credit on her. they kept coming to me like, "Hey, Daddy, did I do something kind? Do I earn a point?" I was like, "Well, you should be doing something regardless," because I didn't know in the beginning what she did, and then she had explained to. I was like, "Oh, that's kind of genius," because now the fights isn't no longer saying you need to go up and go do this. Now the fights is, well, Jameson did this first, and I was going to do that kind thing, and then this kid wanted to do it. And so they're mad because one person wanted to go and set the table for dinner versus the other person that was getting ready to go do it, but they just didn't get to it fast enough. So now it becomes this race, this competition, this game between all of them. And
that's right.
So, I didn't think about it from a business standpoint, like what you just said, but the whole concept plays so true to get people to react and get them to move. Now, here's the challenging part, and then we do need to go to our last break, and maybe we can hit on when we come back. Okay. But the challenging part that I think is, what is going to be that motivating factor? Because what I'm finding is sometimes money sometimes money isn't the motivating factor to get everyone to move. And for me, I want to reward people the way I want to be rewarded. So it goes back to love language. It's like, what is your love language? How do you respond?
Yeah.
And so I want to give money, but I'm like, why are they not moving? So maybe you can give us that secret, maybe you can give us that secret code when we come back.
I have got it, and you bet. That's a brilliant question, buddy.
All right, cool. Well, let's hit on that when we come back, and we'll be back here shortly for the last part of our episode.
Most entrepreneurs miss out on opportunities due to lack of leadership or not knowing how to connect with the right people or the right customers. They struggle keeping their sales pipeline full and booking qualified leads. What would your business look like if you had a team to support you referring your ideal clients who are excited and ready to buy? Business Leaders Network is a mastermind networking community where we focus on education, learning from industry leaders, networking, and building real connections. You can learn more by visiting businessleadersnetworking.com or by tuning into our weekly show with your strategic business success coach, J.R. Spear, on Mondays at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, 12 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. This is Business Leaders Network with J.R. Spear. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to grow@businessleadersnetworking.com. Now, back to the program.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. My name is JR, and I'm your host on the Business Leaders Network, and we are on the Inspired Choices Network. And we're just going to get right into it. So we got about 4 minutes left for the rest of our show. And I just wanted Mr. Eric Beck to hit on the incentives that we need to give our employees to be able to get them to move. Because we talk about turning our work into a game, but not every incentive is the same, and not everyone's going to react and respond the same. So how do we overcome this?
Perfect. We'll stay with football. How many people on the team score a touchdown? One. But what does everybody else do? They do their thing. So my glory as a lineman is putting this dude on his butt. That's my win. And I do that so that the other guy can score the touchdown. But if you think about it, everyone on the team is succeeding in a way that's collaborative. And yes, some people want to be the person in the end zone. Some people want to kick the field goal. That would be the worst for me. I would rather do any role on the football team except the kicker, right? It's like, oh my gosh, right? It's like, but somebody loves that. Okay, so think about it like this. First of all, unless you're running a 501c3 charity, people are there because you're paying them. So let's not be frilly about this. They want the money. Nothing wrong with that. They should get the money. So we want to start with that. All bonuses, all performance-based pay structures have to start with money. This week, this paycheck, Beyonds did you do? And what kind of money does that equal? Now, if you increase your education and your skill set, you go level 2. What's level 2 mean? There's some other above and beyonds you could do. And every month we do a competition. And the month is ended, and we go, who's done the most above and beyonds? And there's a million ways to do this. I'm gonna give you the simple version. It's like, great, Joe got 10, Allison got 30, and Amanda got 32. Great. Does Amanda's 32 turn into money? Give them a choice. Absolutely, it can be money, but it could also be what? Paid time off. It could be this thing. It could be another thing. There are so many layers to make the game work. Like with your kids, I have 6 kids, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, wow.
In fact, our software that we use with our clients, we first used with our kids. I created it years ago, hired some developers, and as I was testing it, I was having my kids do it for chores, and the same thing you were talking about. So we're just cut from the same cloth here. But you'll notice that after a while, the basic motivator isn't so motivational. We want to go from external motivation to internal motivation, but we still have to recognize the effort. You can't say, well, I've got a senior manager, love it, and they're just the vision and everything is great, they're loyal, I don't need to pay them more money, they don't want more money. Hey, be careful, right? We want to structure it so money is always the in the mix, but we're looking at a whole other level of things, of responsibility. People want to move up. They want what they do to be more important. So we start off with that bonus structure that's for this payday. We can look at this month. How about this one? Who's the person on our team that's given the most kudos to other people on the team? There are so many ways to make this game awesome. That's not just about, hey, I got an extra $1,000 because I sold more stuff. It's like, hey, I made a difference. And there are many ways to be recognized for that. Structuring that out is no mean feat. I'll just tell everybody. And if you haven't done the story and you haven't systemized the job functions, please don't go out and try to do performance-based pay, because it's not going to work. And I only know because I failed at it for all these years. But finally, having cracked the code to it, it is this hierarchy of motivation. And like you said, different people are motivated differently, but we've got to start. It's got to be fair. It's got to be objective. But then we give people choices. I actually had a company even do a Wheel of Fortune. If you hit this number, there's literally a Wheel of Fortune in the break room with all kinds of stuff on it, some of which is money. Spin the wheel. There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to
awesome.
the Business Leaders Network Show. J.R. Spear returns Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Mountain, 12 p.m. Pacific on the InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Until then, stay committed to your goals and be resilient even through the most difficult times. Showing up every day, giving your best